Good evening. This is Helen Thomas and the CDFM study group. So whatever time that you're watching this video or listening to this live video. All right, so today I'm going to begin review of CDFM Module 4. Let me put out this disclaimer. If you do not already have CDFM, that means you've passed CDFM Module 1, Module 2, and Module 3, do not listen to this video. Do not watch this live video. The reason I say that is because the acquisition module is an optional module that you can take after you got your certification. And if you have not already taken the test for module 1, 2, and 3, you're going to hear some things that are different because the acquisition book is from 2011. Module 1, 2, and 3 are from 2020. So let me stand by. Let me see if I can pause this. My phone line's finally up. All right. No doubt. All right, so we'll go ahead and continue. All right, so what I'm saying is if you have not already passed Module 1, 2, and 3, do not even listen to this Module 4 video because the 2011 book has some outdated processes as far as naming convention. So the names have changed. So it's going to confuse you if you then listen to this and go back to the Module 1, 2, and 3 from the 2020 study guide. All right, so that's all I'm going to say about that. All right, so we are here to begin. For those want to take the optional module 4 for the acquisition part, if you look on my signature block for those on Outlook, you'll see that -A, that's what it means, is I've taken that additional exam. So you do not need module 4 to get CDFM. You only need module 1, 2, and 3. All right, so let's begin. All right, if you have the 2011 study guide, we will begin with Module 4, Competency 1, that is Chapter 1.1. And if you look at it, it should all look familiar to you because it starts off with the 3 DoD support system. So this is a continuation, but it expands on the acquisition, the defense acquisition system. So remember, I told you there were 3 DoD support systems. What are they? JCIDS, Joint Capabilities Integration and Development System, PPBE, Planning, Programming, Budgeting, and Execution, DAS, Defense Acquisition System. Those 3 systems, so you have the 3 circles, and they overlap at different instances, and they meet in the middle to meet the National Defense Strategy. Also, you will have remembered for Module 1, 2, and 3 is that, again, the big op order is the National Security Strategy. Every organization, every agency looks at the National Security Strategy to determine what are their requirements. So that's what the Department of Defense does. So the DoD looks at the National Security Strategy to determine what are the defense-related requirements for the Department of Defense. Once they figure all that out, then the DoD will essentially publish a national defense strategy with input from the senior military advisor to the Secretary of Defense, the President, and the National Security Council. Who is that individual, or what's the title? That is the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff will develop the national military strategy for inclusion. You got Homeland Security included. So you have all these policies and guidance, fiscal guidance, that's included in the National Defense Strategy. Though, then you have the 3 systems that work together. So I told you in Module 1, 2, and 3 to ensure that you learn JCIDS first, Joint Capabilities Integration and Development System, because once the National Defense Strategy is published, then we need to figure out, do we have the right capabilities in place? If not, what are our capability gaps? So I have to speak slow so I can pronounce my words. All right, what are our capability gaps? So the JSITS process comes into play because we're trying to figure out what the warfighters need. What capability gaps do they have? And that is done by the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, who utilizes JROC, Joint Requirements Oversight Council. They do the analytical process to identify the capability gaps. By looking at the MLPF, Doctrine, Organization, Training, Leader Development, Material, Facilities, all those things that we talk about. So everything I'm going over right now, you would have already learned in Module 1, 2, and 3. All I'm doing is recapping that information to bring us to the Module 4. And so, once you have the JSITs and they identify the capability gap, it's published in an initial capabilities document, sends out to program managers, to all the powers that be. Hey, if it requires any solution in that .mlpf, that's the acronym, then it triggers the PPBE process. If it's a material solution, it triggers the Defense Acquisition System. So that's what we're going to be talking about primarily in Module 4. So we know PPBE is usually how we pay for things. You got to make sure you get in the cycle to request funding from Congress. Programming, you got to submit your POMs to get your programs approved, and so forth. So that's the preliminary starting on page 4.1.2 of your book. So JSIDS is what we identify capability gaps that the warfighter may have. PPBE is how we fund or support, and the Defense Acquisition System is how we buy the equipment or the item that is needed. The recap on page 413 goes into the PPBE process, so I'm not going to do that. Understanding that PPBE, plan, program, budget, and execution overlaps. Remember, who's in charge of the planning phase of P? USD for policy. Programming, the DK, Director of Cost Assessment and Program Evaluation. Budgeting and execution, the USD Comptroller. All I'm doing is recapping what I learned from Module 1, 2, and 3, even though it's not on the page in front of me. So when you look on page 4.1.4, you see that diagram there. So as we know, the PPBE process, planning, programming, budgeting, execution, all overlaps. Because as we learn about appropriations, is an appropriation just because we start 1 October, it doesn't mean that, okay, all that money is gone. Because every appropriation stays in the expired state for 5 years. Some appropriation have a life cycle of 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and an additional 5 years when they are expired. Hence, we have a diagram like on this page, page 4, where you have at some points, let's say it's my book in the 2011, say it's current year FY11, and I say it is June of that year, what's going on? You got to be able to follow that chart. January, February, March, April, May, June. And if you go down, I see we're executing FY11. We are enacting FY12. We're going through the programming and the budget estimate submission, or the POM and the BEST, for FY13. All of that is happening in June of current year, which is FY11. So you need to be able to read this chart and see what's going on. If they tell you the year and the month, then all you got to do is follow the line down and see what's going on in that month. So based on the fiscal year, tell what is happening in that instance. Let me pause for a minute. If you have an opportunity to go to or take, because it's virtual now, the ASMC 2-day course for the acquisition, I highly recommend it. It's awesome because it prepares you, like, especially if you do not, which I don't, work in acquisition. So a lot of this stuff was new to me. Some I learned from CDFM module 1, 2, and 3, but once I got to module 4, it was like, oh my God. But once I also went the extra step, I took that 2-day course from American Society of Military Comptroller, and it was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. So if you have an opportunity to get the virtual course, take it first, then go through this material, then come back to my videos, and all of this will make sense. All right, so starting on page 415, you see they go into the PPBE process, planning, fiscally constraint, right? Because we might have 10 requirements, but we only have funding for 9. Or we only have funding for 8. So we got to prioritize, okay, which 8 are we going to do? So fiscally constraint guidance, joint programming guidance. Programming phase, which we already went over, but if you notice on this, they list the defense planning and programming guidance with fiscal constraint. What you're going to need to know from module 4, so if you haven't passed the other tests, don't listen to this, okay? Because the name has changed in the 2020 books. But for module 4, the final document in the programming and the budgeting phase is the resource management decision, the RMD. Again, this is only for the 2011 module 4 study guide. The final document in planning is defense planning and programming guidance, or defense planning guidance. Programming and budgeting is the resource management decision. That's the last document that's published. And let's see. And then the execution phase is your appropriations. What else we have? So programming is where, remember, when the budget goes to Congress, and you have the ones that look at the authorization, that's your program. And then you have your appropriators, they look at the budget, right? So that's how you tie those two together. So programming is just your gross numbers, the large numbers. There's really no specifics in the programming. Let's see. So we got fall reviews, USD Comptroller. We already talked about that. Final decision, final document, RMD. Execution, when Congress appropriates the funds. Then 2 things happen. Treasury issues a Treasury warrant. The OMB begins the apportionment process. How does that begin? The agencies have 10 days to submit an SF-132 apportionment document to OMB. Then OMB has 30 days to return their apportionment. And DOD issues allotment. All I'm doing again is repeating what I know about the topic. Important to know on the bottom of page 416, in the first year of a presidential election, they typically do a new national security strategy. Big op order, right? NSS. So first year of the presidential administration, they do a new NSS. And what I want you to do when you read that paragraph, remember in the earlier studies, we talk about a strategic document for each agency. So the DOD has, the name that's used in the 2011 is the Quadrennial Defense Review, the QDR. That's that 4-year strategic update. So when you read, I think the last sentence of this paragraph, you'll see at the bottom, in the second year of that presidential administration, giving them the president and the new SecDef that first year, in the second year, they have to publish a new strategic document, whether it's called the QDR, Quadrennial Defense Review, or the National Defense Review, National Defense Strategy, NDS. All right. So I wanted to clear that up. So if you see QDR, Quadrennial Defense Review, it is the same thing as today, the National Defense Strategy. So I think I covered everything there. Page 417. So in the book, it kind of starts with PEEB, then it goes to JSIDS. But again, when I go over the study, I say it's best to learn JSIDS, then you go to PPBE, or you go to the Defense Acquisition System. But In the event you didn't understand when I said that in JSIDS you do an analytical review of the .mlpf. What does .mlpf mean? On page 417, under the paragraph, Joint Capabilities and Integration and Development System, that first paragraph, the second to last sentence, while it considers the full range of doctrine, organization, training, material, leadership and education, personnel and facilities. Those are all the .mlpf areas that the JROC, who is chaired by the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, what they look at, so that they can determine where does that capability gap lie. Where do we have a problem? JCS acknowledges the need to project and sustain the forces. The warfighter, we're looking for what does the warfighter need, so we identify that capability gap. So I'm not going to sit here and repeat that portion of it. JCS is also a top-down process, right? So because it's done at the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, at their level, the top, to determine what the warfighter needs, top down. So they look at the QDR, National Security Strategy, National Military Strategy, Joint Vision 2020. I'm reading off the bottom of page 418. So all these acronyms, so eventually we're going to go through, you see the diagram in the middle of page 8, we're eventually going to go through each one of those. Remember when we went through module 2? Yeah, module 2. We talked about the phases and the milestones, right, in the acquisition. So this is what this is about. So ICD in the beginning, that initial capabilities document where the JROC says this is the solution it's going to take to fill the gap. This is the gap, this is the solution. Then you have your material solution analysis. That's what it's called in the new book, but you have the material development document to tell you what you need, and so forth. So we're going to go through each one of those phases eventually as we go through the entire module 4. At the top of page 419, and see what it says. It talks about the ACAT acquisition categories. So ACAT 1 and 1A. So ACAT 1 programs tells you it's a major acquisition program. And we also said that ACAT 1A, major automated information system program. The JROC, it mentions there again, the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff. So all of that is repeated in that paragraph. So I've already went over all that with you. What you're also going to need to know for Module 4 is where things happen in the process. So my goal is to eventually get you to that point where you know, okay, well, this happens at milestone A, or material solution analysis. Remember when we talked about LREP, low rate initial production, right? That number is identified milestone B, and we actually produce it in the production. So those are the kind of things you're going to know at the end of Module 4. So keep that in mind as we move along the process. Also in Module 4, on page 419, in the newest study guides for 1, 2, and 3, the senior acquisition person at the DoD level is different. In this 2011 study guide, it used to be the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics. For this exam, that's what it is. So I'm not going to even mention what the new one is because it's going to confuse the matter. So that's why I said if you haven't passed the other ones, don't even listen to this video because you're going to be confused. So USD ATNL is the senior acquisition person for the 2011 study guide. That's the person, milestone decision authority, defense acquisition executive, the person in charge of the defense acquisition board or the IT acquisition board, your technology acquisition board. That's the USD ATNL. A repeat chart on page 12. The acquisition categories, ACAT 1 Delta, is at the DOD level. The D behind it lets you know it's DOD level. If it's a general major acquisition, or if it's an automated, ACAT 1 AM, the M for Major Automated Information System, MAIS. So that lets you know that's at a DOD level. If it's at the component level, there will be a C behind the acquisition category. So what you need to know is who is the senior acquisition person at the DOD level. USD AT&L. That's the person that's going to make the decision at each of those decision points to say whether we move forward, what do we need to change, what do we need to update, are we on target, are we behind schedule, cost, schedule, performance. Keep that in mind. So we went through all of that. All right, moving on to page 14. So technology development strategy. So remember the phases: material solution analysis. Now we move to milestone A, then to technology maturation, risk reduction, or technology development strategy. Let's see what we need to know. Technology development phase. The purpose is to reduce technology risk, determine the appropriate technology to integrate, demonstrate the critical technologies. So we want to make sure the prototypes have the technology, have the attributes that we want to be able to meet that and fill that capability gap. So remaining steps after technology development. So let me see if it says, yep, it does say. All right. So technology development is done at milestone A, and acquisition strategy is done, remaining steps after technology, milestone B. The AS is presented and approved at milestone B. So if you read the bottom of page 4114, you'll see where it says, so you have technology development equals milestone A. And I also recommend get you a blank sheet of paper as we go through 4.1, 4.2, all the way to 4.10 in the next few weeks, is recreate the chart, that acquisition chart, to show, okay, well, this happens at milestone A. Then list all the things that happens on the milestone A. If I say this happens at milestone B, list all the things happen at milestone B. That way, you'll be able to visualize it when you see it again in an examination forum. So technology development, milestone A, and acquisition strategy begins at milestone B. Just writing it in my book. So the top of page 15 is just telling you that the acquisition approach is not always a brand new process. It's an evolutionary or single step. Evolutionary means we starting with research and R&D, research and development. Then we go to development phase and we produce it and we go through each phase. Or let's say that they have an item already on the commercial market that already does what we want to do on the military defense side, then we can do a single step. So it's either evolutionary or single step approach. So they have a list of sources, capability needs, just a list of stuff I'm not going to read through. We're going to talk about on page 16 more in depth on resource management. I think we have 2 sessions that we're going to do that, because the majority of the questions will come from the resource management section. Test and evaluation. So most of the stuff we're going to go into details on these pages that I'm skipping. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it right now. On page 18, the term acquisition program baseline. So remember, when we identify a capability gap in that initial capabilities document, you also, once they identify, okay, it's going to take this aircraft, this description, these attributes, these parameters to fill the capability gap. Then the next step is that ICD document should go to your program manager. Program manager, how much is this going to cost me? Oh, okay, let me break it down. Let me see. So the acquisition program baseline, they might say, well, who creates the acquisition program baseline? The word program in it should remind you the program manager creates the acquisition program baseline. That's giving a starting number of how much you think it's going to cost you. No different than if you're doing a repair on your house. You're not going to just jump out there. I hope not. You will figure out, okay, if I want an extension on the back of my house, it's going to take the supplies, it's going to take labor, it's going to take electricity, I'm going to need an electrician or whatever it's going to take. What's the estimated cost it's going to cost me for this project? That is your baseline created by your program manager. So, in that threshold, that means the limit is your objective. That's what you're trying to meet. Keep everything under that objective. Page 19, let's see. 10, per U.S. Code 2345, must have milestone decision approval for all steps. So the law on the top of page 19 is what says, remember I told you, before you go through the acquisition phases, and you got to have a milestone or a decision point that the milestone decision authority has to look at the data up to that point and say yay or nay, what needs to change, what we need to adjust to move forward. And that is based off of guidance from 10 U.S. Code 2435. That should make it easier to remember. That says the DoD may not obligate any funds for a major program after the program enters system development and demonstration. What else? Without a milestone decision authority approval. And they got to approve the dollar amount, that baseline. Performance. So remember I told you, and I say it's easy to remember, cost, schedule, performance. That's what you measure. Remember we touched on earned value management. In module 2, we touched on EVM. So you're going to look at EVM more in detail. Cost, schedule, performance. If I said it's going to cost $5 million and now it's at $4 million, okay, that's a benefit. If I say it's going to cost $5 million for this project and now we're up at $6 million, we got a problem. We need to monitor. You say it's going to take a month to do the job and now we're 2-3 months into it, schedule. What's the quality of the work? That's the performance piece of it. What's the quality? What's the value? Because the idea when you put an extension or you do a project is the value of the work should be more than what you pay for it, right? That's what you want. On page 20, 4120, it talks about trade-offs. I want to save money. So the best time, I've seen this statement in multiple acquisition materials, so it's probably important to you. The best time to reduce total ownership costs and program schedule is early on in the acquisition program. Like, oh, wow, really? You all right? So it makes sense. It just seems like when you learn it, you read it, it's like, okay, yeah, that should make sense. Why didn't I get that? You want to reduce the cost before you spend all this money late in the process and then find out, oh, I could have gotten it cheaper and a better quality. The term trade space is in parentheses or quotation marks. The program manager may treat the difference between the objective and its threshold. So if you have a difference between what you need to do and what your limit is, that's your trade space, where you can decide, okay, I can pay a little bit more, no I can't, or I gotta go less. Trade space. So cost as an independent variable, that is the definition, even though it's not listed on page 4120 under trade-offs, the second paragraph. Cost as an CAIV is the best time to reduce total ownership cost is early on in the acquisition process. So that is CDFM Module 4, Competency 1, Goals, Strategy, and Decision Support. So let me read the summary, because the summary is always good in the Module 4. And what I found with the Module 4 also is when I took the exam, it's like directly from the book. So the material is easier to recall because it's directly related to the book. But you still got to know the processes. So don't think you can just memorize and then go. You got to know the entire process. All right, so DODI. So DOD instruction 5000.01 states that each program manager must prepare. So these are several documents prepared by the program manager. So if they say who prepares it, if it's not the National Military Strategy, which is created by the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, then pick program manager, especially when you're talking the acquisition test. So the program manager, PM, must create, let's see, and the MDA must approve a technology development strategy, the acquisition strategy. And when did we say the technology development strategy and the acquisition strategy is completed? Technology development strategy is milestone A, and acquisition strategy is milestone B. And acquisition program baseline is in the beginning, right? So that's probably at milestone A. Well, it's probably, no, it's before, because you need your baseline before you start doing your analysis of the alternative. So we see in the summary, in the middle of that first paragraph on page 20, says a primary goal of these strategies is to minimize time cost, schedule, performance, and satisfy the needs for technology strategy. Okay, all right, so pretty general. All right, so all of this is straightforward. These three documents ensure the DoD acquisition program are considered all aspects. All right, reducing risk. So remember that. All right, let's move on to CDFM Module 4, Competency 2. These are kind of small, so that's why I kind of put a few together. Now we're going to be talking about systems engineering. We're getting into actually develop. So remember, we identified the capability gap. We said it was a material solution, so that triggered the acquisition system. When we get to the acquisition system, we want to now go through those milestones and those phases and milestones to make decision. And as we're going through that process, we're going to be talking about systems engineering. So these are bits and pieces of that whole process. Let's see what I have on my notes. System engineering is the overarching process that a program team applies to transition from a capability need to operation. So we want to make, is the process, makes sense, right? Engineering process, systems engineering, from the cradle, when I identify we have a shortage, this is what it's going to take to fix it, these are the qualities this item needs to have, develop it, test it, put it out in the market, sustain it. That is your systems engineering process in Helen's version. All right, page 423. So we got definition, we got life cycle, again, program manager, PM, because they start off systems engineering plan. So you're making your list, your diagram. Milestone A, program manager also prepares a SEP, systems engineering plan. What does it say? At milestone A, the SEP supports the technology development strategy. Ooh, see how you tie those two together? Okay, so you have the technology development strategy, which we said is done at milestone A. So the program manager does a SEP, systems engineering plan, and then when you do it at milestone B, a SEP, it's supporting the acquisition strategy. Is that what it says? Let's read it. At milestone B or later, the SEP supports the acquisition strategy. So the SEP describes the program overall technical approach, technical risks, all the technical resources, metrics that goes with it. Systems engineering tells you it's specific, it's technical. Systems engineering plan begins at milestone A. So it happens at milestone A, B, and C if you're asked. Even though it don't mention C, but it says throughout, right? So we got a few there. And I'm going to take my own recommendation when I'm finished here and go back and start a blank sheet and kind of show you the end result or the process as we go through it. So when I start next week, I'll have that sheet and be able to show it to you. All right. I don't have any. So key features, configuration management, technical reviews done on page 424, 425. You make sure that you have the systems have a modular open systems approach, because we can interchange parts. We don't want just specific items, affordable to change them. Data management, how we going to manage the data if it's secret information on it, how we going to manage that. Is there a tail number? Let's say it's an aircraft. It's got to have an item unique number, a UIC number, have a specific number. Electromagnetic, what type of system? Is it going to be GPS? So all of those things we're going to look at. So bear with me as we just skip over some of these things. All right, page 426. Let's see, I got some notes here. Integrated product and process development. So we want to integrate, because remember, typically when you build a aircraft or a vehicle or even a computer system, there are different pieces, different program managers that build certain pieces, and you got to integrate each of them to make the overall product for what we need. So that's your integrated product and process development. IPT, so you have integrated product teams that come together so that they can make sure that the specifications the program managers listed is being met. The definition of integrated product and process development is on the bottom of page 426. Management technique integrates, you just put it in your own words. IPPD facilitates meeting costs and performance objectives. One of the key tenets for an integrated team is multidisciplinary teamwork through integrated product teams, right? Because again, everybody have a different piece of the pie, but we got to integrate them. They got to have teams that come together from each of the sections to make sure that we build the right product. On page 427, and another introduction, there are 3 levels of that IPT, integrated product team. An overarching integrated product team, an integrating integrated product team, and a working level integrated product team. So I think this is covered more in detail in, I want to say, around chapter 9, 8 or 9, somewhere down the line. So it'll make sense later. They're just introducing these teams to you now. On page 427, you also see all acquisition categories, ACAT 1 Delta and 1 AM, right? Automated system is, which means those are DoD level program, will have an OIPT to provide assistance, oversight, overarching group in that whole process. So when you're talking billions of dollars, it's not just one level of individuals. You have several levels, several teams. The program manager collaborates with the action officer, and they collaborate to form and co-lead. So that program manager that's building their portion of it also sits on that integrated product team, the IIPT. Then you have your working level integrated product team. The program manager and the OSD action officer develop working structure and propose the structure of the OIPT. WIPT should meet as required to help the program manager plan program structure and documentation. So I'm not going to go into detail at this point, just to introduce you. All right, let's move on to technical management process on 4.2.11. So in systems engineering, we're building from scratch, technical focus. You've got decision analysis. Let's see what it says. My notes here. Provides the basis for evaluating and selecting alternatives when decisions need to be made. Right? So it's like if you're like when you did the courses of action for the analysis of the alternative, you got to have a decision analysis metric of what are the key checklists. What are you putting on that checklist of things that you need to measure to make sure that that capability is meeting the required items. Technical planning, technical assessment, requirements management. See, provides traceability back to the user capabilities. We want to make sure when we started with the JSIDs, that whole process, they told us the initial capabilities document, what needs to be done. We get all throughout the process, we got to make sure we're tying it back to, are we filling that capability gap? Requirements management, maintain traceability, document all changes, and record the reason for the changes. Configuration management, if you're changing the configuration in the process, result in a complete audit trail. So that's the bottom line of all of these management, is an audit trail of all the changes that's being made, why they're being made, what needs to happen, so that, again, we can follow the process through to complete that audit. Data management interface. And then you have, so that was the technical management processes. Then you have the technical processes, specific on page 4214. So you got some definition for stakeholder requirements, requirement analysis. So those are just, I'm just reading the topics because you can just read over those topics and the information. I'm just going to go to the highlights that I have of things that is important for you to study and remember in this list. Page 4215, implementation. Implementation is a process that actually, so you need to know the definitions. So pull out all the keywords. Yields the lowest level system elements in the system hierarchy. You implement the lowest level. So I got lowest level highlighted. So that's why I need to know about that. Verification. You need to verify, did you build it right? Did you build, so whatever it is that we built, let's stick to the aircraft. If I build that aircraft, I need to be able to verify that I build that aircraft to the specifications listed by the program manager. Did you build it right? Then validation is it the right solution to fill that capability gap? So validation, know the difference between validation and verification. Verify if you build the aircraft correctly, and validate that that aircraft will fill that capability gap. So I'm just using aircraft as an example to help you to better remember. Is it the right solution to fill the capability gap? Okay, let me look at my notes. Again, if you need my notes, email me or leave a note on the comment, and I'll give you my email so you can email me, and I have a document where I actually wrote notes, and then I go back to the study guide to verify. So systems of systems engineering, because these words can kind of mess you up sometimes. Page 4216. There's two things you need to know out of the first paragraph. There's one, and then the second paragraph. Systems of systems, you need to know what the definition is, and family of systems. What's the difference between those? So let me go to my notes so I can read it as is. Systems of systems engineering. Okay, so a systems of systems having capabilities greater than the sum of the capabilities of the parts. So when you put all the systems together, they have a greater capability overall. System of systems, that they make one system made up of several systems. System of systems has a greater capability when you put all the parts together. A family of systems is just systems, but if you put them together, they'll make no difference. So it does not create any additional capability beyond the individual parts. Systems of systems greater capability, family of systems, nothing greater than the individual capabilities of the parts. I'm going to leave it at that. That's as much as you need to know. Don't go any deeper. Remember I said on page 17, the top, evolutionary or single step process. So evolutionary acquisition programs. It talks about the milestone. You got to go through milestone A, then the next phase, milestone B. That's evolutionary. Or I go directly to milestone B. So your summary again for that section is there. They list again on the bottom of page 17, systems of systems. Program manager should ensure the contractor has established a process. So that's your earned value management process that's used to ensure that the contractor is meeting cost, schedule, performance. I want you to get tired of hearing me say that. Material solution analysis is on page 19. That's going through figuring out, okay, now you tell me what the capability gap is, what it's going to take to fix it. Material solution analysis is going through different courses of action. What is it going to take to fix it? And so material solution analysis phase is going through that detail. On page 20 at the bottom, if you read it, so a lot of this is repetitive, so don't get confused. If you read that, it's going back again to JSIDS, where it's talking about the initial capabilities document, saying what is needed, then the director, which the director of program analysis and evaluation is the same thing as the DCAPE, director of cost assessment and program evaluation, gives the guidance on the analysis of the alternative, the AOA. So that's part of that first phase of the acquisition process. So on the top of page 21, that's what it's talking about again, the AOA. Updating the acquisition decision memorandum. Just because you have a favorable milestone A does not mean a new acquisition program has been initiated. We've heard that multiple times. ICD, all of that repetitive. The last paragraph, at the bottom of page 21, 4-21, says material solution analysis phase ends when the analysis of the alternative has been completed. That means you went through all, based on the decision analysis criteria you have of what you're looking for. Okay, this capability can do this. Yep, increase morale, increase safety, whatever. Once it's done, you select one, and then you have your recommendation. So at the end of the AOA, material solution and options for the capability need in the approved ICD has been recommended. You give your recommendation to the DoD component, whether it's the DoD level or the component acquisition, so they can make a decision on what needs to happen at milestone A. So that's what it says. Material solution analysis, then you have milestone A. Page 4-22, technology development phase. So after milestone A, you go to technology development. If you look at the chart, you can see material solution analysis, milestone A, technology development. So all of that is pre-system. We haven't developed an acquisition system. It's pre-system. So the purpose of technology, remember we said earlier, so I keep saying remembering because I want you to know you've seen the information before. So I am repeating intentionally. So reduce technology risk. That's the primary thing. At milestone A, at the top of page 23, so if you're making your chart, you should now also have on the milestone A, the MDA reviews the proposed material solution and drafts the technology development strategy, the TDS. So we have a plan, technology development plan. We want to develop the strategy. The technology development phase begins when the MDA, Milestone Decision Authority, has approved a material, have approved a course of action, and documents it in the acquisition decision memorandum. On page 4-24, at the top, the second paragraph, My note says, at milestone 8, the DoD component shall submit a cost estimate for the proposed solution, right? That baseline, that's your cost estimate, identified by the AOA. So you got to be able to tie the info together. Acquisition program baseline, that's your first cost estimate that's submitted at milestone 8. All right, this is the course of action that you recommend in the material solution analysis. Now, once we get to milestone 8, I want to know, okay, what's the bottom line? What's it going to cost me? Alright, I don't have any highlights here. Straightforward. On the bottom of page 4228, some repeat. The engineering, manufacturing, development phase. So yeah, page 27 starts the EMD phase. So remember, let's see. Milestone technology development, then it's milestone B. Then you come to EMD phase. So they're going through all the phases first. And then I guess we'll go over the milestones after. But understand that milestone B has occurred because the approval in milestone B is what triggers a formal systems acquisition program. So EMD phase, the purpose of the EMD phase is to develop the system, produce it, field it, test it. At the bottom of page 28, let's see what I have here. EMD begins at milestone B, which is normally initiation of an acquisition program. So that's what I just said, but if you want to see it in writing. It also tells you, let's see, I see some stuff here. Each increment of evolutionary acquisition have its own milestone B unless initiated at C. At milestone B, the MDA shall approve the acquisition strategy and the acquisition program baseline. So that's your formal baseline. And then remember, you're updating that baseline as you move through that process. So technology development strategy, milestone A. Then when you get to milestone B, acquisition strategy, we also want to look at that baseline, that starting number, and see, okay, where are we before I approve to go into a formal acquisition program. So you got some milestone B things. If it starts at B, that means it also happens at C. So they might ask you which milestone does this begin, or where does it occur? That's what they're talking about. Page 29, the second paragraph, EMD has two major efforts: integrated system design and system capability. So we want to design the system, then we want to look at the capability once we put it in the field. So I'm not going into detail in that. Page 31 is a repeat from module 2. Number 5, the LRIP is identified, the quantity, that's the lowest amount of that aircraft that we want to build initially. So we have to settle that number in milestone B. So that's your LRIP. Okay, nothing else there. MDA approves acquisition strategy. Repeat again, number 7. That's all repetitive. Production and deployment begins on the bottom of page 33. The purpose, so if you notice, you got to know the purpose of every phase. So the purpose of acquisition, production and deployment phase is to achieve operational capability. We want to produce an actual, everything we had on paper, we identified, we had prototypes. Now we need to develop the actual product, actual aircraft, so we could put some prototypes out in the field, give it to the warfighter, and test it. So that's the purpose of production and deployment. And on 35, what it's telling you is when you get to the production and deployment phase, that's when you put your LRIP into action. Milestone B, we identify the quantity. Now we're going to actually produce the items in the production and deployment phase. So that's what the LRIP is talking about here. 4236, once we do that initial LRIP, we test it, then we need to have another decision point. So your decision point, milestone A, B, C, but you also need to have another decision point, which is the full rate production and deployment. Before they go into that full production, we need to meet again to determine, okay, do we continue? Did we like the results? Were there any hiccups, issues, things we didn't cover before you actually develop the other millions and billions of that equipment? Full rate production, that's a decision point. Decision point. Real time. All right, military equipment valuation. For milestone C, the program manager. So I'm reading at the top of page 37, number 3. The program manager prepares a program. So I think that's the card. When you did module 2, they should have mentioned the CARD, the cost analysis, I think, description. A program description as part of the acquisition strategy, the production and deployment throughout the life cycle cost. And then the final phase on page 38, operations and support phase. The purpose of that phase to execute the support system for that aircraft, in my example. And part of operations and support is once that go through, let's say the life cycle of that aircraft is 20 years. Once that 20 years is up, on page 39, I need to think about Title 42 U.S. Code. What's the disposal procedure for that aircraft based on that legal and regulatory guidance? So if you read through that paragraph on the bottom of page 39, it talks about Title 42 of the U.S. Code. And then you have specific guidelines on how to dispose of the equipment, whether we trash it or we sell it in that, foreign military sale. On page 4241, you go into important design considerations, things you got to think about when you're designing that aircraft, that vehicle. The first thing on page 43 is an open system design. What is an open system? That means it'll be easy to get parts for it, widely supported, based on the standards, the attributes, the parameters, the system's engineering plan. All of that is integrated. So open system approach. We talked about a modular system. You got to be able to get the parts for it. Not just this one company can produce this item. Once you break one, you can't get it. We need more options. Another consideration that's big in this section is page 45, 4245, which is the COTS, commercial off-the-shelf items. If we can get some of the items that's already on the commercial side, it'll be easier and quicker for us to develop that capability. So use of commercial items, significant opportunities to reduce development time. You get that faster, right? We can't wait 20, 30 years for an aircraft or a vehicle that we need today, or computer systems. Manufacturing capability, quality, those are all important. When you come to the design considerations on page 47, you want to look at the RAM, reliability, availability, and maintainability. Okay, I like that. So the program manager established the objectives for the RAM early in the acquisitions cycle. Let's see, do they go into each? Nope. So RAM, reliability. So your ability to perform without failure. Ability to perform quickly and return to service. So you can repair it and send it back out into the field. Or maintainability, ease and efficiency of corrective actions. Maintenance for the item. So think of RAM. Supportability. We can get all the parts to support. Human systems integration. So if it's going to be an aircraft, well, it's going to need a pilot. It's going to need engineers or support for that pilot. So if I incorporate a human being into the process, what are the requirements? So human systems engineering. What type of skills do they need to have? So we're going to look at some of these later on. Environmental considerations, right? Is it going to cause pollution? How much can we reduce it? Survivability. If they get attacked, hit, what is the survivability rate for that human individual that's in that aircraft, in that vehicle? Survivability. Corrosion prevention. How are you going to stop it from rusting? That's also on page 50. And then on page 51, we go into disposal, demilitarization, meaning you're taking off certain military configurations before you sell it to foreign military sale. Just like the information we send to other countries, our allies that's at war, and we send them equipment, we've already taken off certain things on those equipment that's specific to our operation. Also on page 51, you have information assurance. Okay? If it has a GPS, if it has secret information, how are we going to control that information when we put it in that equipment, in that aircraft? Who's going to have access to it? Sometimes we work alongside our allies. So how much do we allow for them to be able to access? Those are all the things that we have to consider. Research and technology protection on page 53. The component of overall system security identifies safeguards. That's the key word there, is we have to be able to place safeguards on the equipment. So all of that is thought up front when they are developing these items. Critical safety, we already talked about item unique identification, so that's a repeat from earlier. On page 4256, so we tell you that the program manager has to create a SEP, we said that earlier, systems engineering plan, prior to technology development strategy to support that strategy. So what does he have? SEP is a detailed formulation action that should guide all technical aspects of that program. The PM shall prepare SEP for each milestone review, beginning with milestone A. So that's a repeat again of what we talked about earlier. Value engineering on the bottom of page 56, an analysis of the functions of a program of an extensive agency performed by qualified agency or individual directed at improving performance. Value in that plan. Another big thing you're going to have to know for this acquisition portion at the bottom of page 57, modeling and simulation. Once I develop the aircraft, I need to be able to test it, right? So what type of simulation am I going to use? So at the top of page 58, modeling and simulation is an essential element of this total systems engineering process. So that is done throughout. So every time we build a part, we need to make sure that part operates the way we expect it to. So modeling and simulation occurs throughout the acquisition process. And that's all I have on that page. All right, where are we moving on? Oh, that's it. Hold on, let me back. Okay, so that's all I have out 1 and 2. So let me go over my notes. My little handy dandy, like how many pages? 30-something pages. That. All right, let's see. So we talk about USD policy, DCAP, USD comptroller, national security strategy. The JSIS operates on behalf of the warfighter to identify warfighter needs by looking at the .mlpf. If it's anything other than material solution, it triggers the PPBE process. If it's a material solution like an aircraft, like a DTS system, Defense Travel System, that's a DoD information system, it triggers the Defense Acquisition System. JSIS is done by the Joint Requirements Oversight Council. That's all those joint chiefs of staff, joint representatives. Then it's chaired by the vice chairman of the joint chief of staff. Once they identify a capability gap, they look at the big op order, NSS, National Security Strategy. The DoD comes up with the National Defense Strategy or the Quadrennial Defense review, QDR, and then they identify the capability gap in JSIDs. They publish it in an initial capabilities document prior to milestone 8. We haven't done nothing. This is what the capability gap is. This is the solution that is going to need to fix it. Then you go to your program manager to actually give you starting numbers, dollar amounts, specifications, attributes, and the capabilities, production, deployment. The JROC is chaired by the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff. The Vice Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff is the co-chairman of the Defense Acquisition Board. So if it's a material solution, it triggers the Defense Acquisition System. That's our buyers. So JROC or the JSIDs represent our warfighters. We identify warfighter needs. PPBE is our resource manager. How we going to pay for things. And the Defense Acquisition System is the buyers, the producers. So we already talked about that. Except in one skill, the program support is assigned on behalf. All right, a program manager is a single point of accountability for accomplishing the program objectives, except if that program manager has a program support manager where they assign the duties to that individual. So again, PM is that single point of accountability. We'll talk about that. Acquisition program baseline, thresholds, objectives. Per U.S. Code 2435, the DoD may not obligate without having approval from the Milestone Decision Authority. Trade-offs, that's that space between the objectives and your threshold. Cost as an independent variable. Early on in the process, reduce costs. The 3 acquisition documents: technology development strategy, acquisition strategy, that's in the beginning, and the acquisition program baseline. Okay, section 2, which is 15% of the exam. So section 1 was how much? 11, I think. Verify 11. Yeah, 11%. Section 2, systems engineering, is 15% of the exam. The SEP, program manager, prepares it, systems engineering plan beginning with milestone A to support the technology development strategy, and at the acquisition strategy to prepare for acquisition strategy. Modular, open system, RM. Let's see. The program manager shall establish a risk management process and summarize in the acquisition strategy. Risk management is done in acquisition strategy. Decision points, milestone A, B, C, full rate production. If you have milestone development decisions, material solution analysis, technology developments, engineering and manufacturing, production and deployment, operations and support phase. Those are your phases. Milestone A, milestone B, milestone C. Let's see, decision analysis, selecting alternatives. We talked about verification versus validation. Verify that you build the aircraft correctly. Validate that it's the right solution. Systems of systems. System of systems and family of systems. I can make one system out of several systems, and when I do that, it gives me a greater capability than the individual ones. A family, they're just simply family. The family come together, but they do not have any greater capability. Evolutionary step versus single step. That's our acquisition process. And disposal on the Title 42. Modeling and simulation is done throughout. the whole acquisition process. And you have key aspects of the technical consideration, open systems approach, reliable, that RAM, open system, reliability, availability, maintainability, supportability. It has a unique identification, value, and commercial off the shelf. We try to use COTS as much as possible because it's a faster initiation or insertion of a new technology. All right, so that concludes Module 4, Competency 1 and 2 out of the 2011 Study Guide. And again, we will continue review next week of Module 4. And I thank you guys for stopping by. So be sure to subscribe. Please, I ask that you will support our YouTube page, because again, the more people like videos and subscribe, then YouTube will publicize our YouTube channel so that other financial managers can find it. So be sure to subscribe. Leave comments, click. If you have questions, something I said you didn't understand, feel free to leave it there. So this is Helen Thomas and the CDFM Study Group. I'll see you guys again next time.